In today's class, we are covering the laws of Kriyas HaTorah, the laws of reading the Torah, and we've been talking about what to do when the Kohanim are there, when they're not there, and basically, we talked about when these things are not as going as planned, and so that's what we left off with last time. And so what we're looking at doing today is covering an interesting case. This case is where the whole city is Kohanim. So we have the case of where we don't have the Kohanim, where the Kohanim showed up late. But now what we want to look at is what do you do when everyone's a Kohen? So you have the opposite problem. Okay? So the Mishna, the Mechaber, Zok, a city that's all Kohanim. Okay? Gotta be a fun place. If there is even one Yisrael there, so that's not cool Kohanim, but anyway, bear with me for a second. It's normally an all Kohen city, okay, which they used to have back in the day, and there's a Yisrael that shows up, so that Yisrael, he goes first, so that way it's peaceful amongst everybody else, okay, and if there is not enough Yisrael to go around, okay, or there's not another regular Jew around at all, then you just call all Kohanim. It's Kohanim all the way down, okay? Because no one's going to say you're not a Kohen because everyone's a Kohen. All right? And when everyone's a Levi, the rule will be the same. Okay, so this is what I like to call people. This is what we say. People had a lot of time on their hands to ask some very fun theoretical questions. So kula kohanim. All right. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah points out it's all kohanim and there's no Levium. Okay, so it's not just there's just not a Yisrael there. It's all kohanim. Okay, and so you can't follow the order that the rabbi set up, and so therefore you're just going to make nice, when Yisrael comes to visit. But if there is a Levi there, then you're going to do the normal one: you Kohen and then a Levi, and then Yisrael, and then right, and then everyone else would be Kohanim if it's the day like Shabbos. Okay. Now, if there's two Yisrael, so we said the decision of the Shulchan Aruch is that there's one Yisrael, he goes first. So let's say there's two. Okay, and they both come to shul that day. That's at the same minyan, and more than that too. So, there has to be not enough Yisrael there, is what the Shulchan Aruch himself says, which would imply that you only call the Kohen first when you have more than one Yisrael. Okay, and so if you're going to call a Kohen in place of the Levi, and then call the Yisrael, and then the rest of the Aliyahs, you could then all call Kohanim. So, because there's no Levi there, you're not going to do the normal Kohen takes the first two Aliyahs and the Yisrael, because we know they're all going to be Kohanim. If you have this huge majority Kohen city, and then there's two Levium and two Yisraelim, okay? So you're going to call the Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael, and then you're going to do Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, okay? And then a Kohen can go number 7. And essentially, if you're going to add more than that. So we see that actually follows the rule of the Shulchan Aruch himself, which he introduced two halachos ago. Okay? So he said the reason why the Yisrael goes first is because it sustains the peace. Why? So that way they wouldn't say, why didn't I go first? So if we call the Yisrael number 3, right, every Kohen afterwards is going to go, well, why don't I get the first Aliyah? Why does this guy get the first Aliyah? But again, we're talking about a case where it's all Kohanim. But anyway, so that's what the reasoning was. So too, if there's one Levi there, okay, and everybody else is a Kohen, so that Levi goes first. Now, if there's only Kohanim and Levium, so you should then go Kohen Levi, Kohen Levi, Kohen Levi, okay. If it's a Kohen, and let's say he's an Avel, so he can't come, and there's no other Kohen in the whole shul, and it's on Shabbos, so then what's it called? So that Kohen, who's the only one that you can call, he's in the shul. Normally, don't call an Avel when on Shabbos. Sometimes they even skip the morning shul altogether. But they're supposed to be there, but you don't normally give him an aliyah. But if he's the only Levi there, only Kohen there, you call him instead of calling the Levi. However, during the week, you don't do that. Okay. So whether it's the weekday or it's Shabbos, it's better that he should leave the shul and not be there when they're calling people up. Okay, and that way that someone else can be called up and there's dead. Okay, halacha 13. If a minor is called to the Torah in the public reading, we will discuss that rule in Siman Reish Pei Beis, right? 282. We also say in this halacha that if there is no Kohen, except for one who is either blind or who doesn't know how to read, we will explain that rule in detail in Kuf Lamed Tes 139. Okay, so we're in 135, so we got a little ways to go. Okay, halacha 14. People who are currently under arrest, they are currently in jail. You don't bring a Sefer Torah to them. Okay, even if it's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The Berurah adds, and that's only when it's for that one reading. Okay, but if you have a Sefer Torah that's there for them for a couple of days, that's permitted. And the Berurah adds, and if he's an important person, then of course it's okay to do. So, and then with that we'll finish the chapter. We'll finish that chapter. We'll do Kuf Lamed Vav as well. Okay, but so for halacha Yadalid, people who are in jail. So the Mishnah explains also someone is sick and they're in the hospital. Okay, some people disagree and they say that in these cases they are exempt because they are kind of compelled to be there. But on Parshas Zachor, then you can go and bring it to them because everyone has to hear Parshas Zachor. And some people also say even Parshas Para. Okay, so you can do that for them. So we say the rule is you don't bring a Sefer Torah to them. Why? Because that means you're going to also have to bring a minyan, and the reason that is because it is inappropriate and disrespectful to Sefer Torah to walk it to people who really need to come to it. Okay, because everyone here is going to this guy. That sounds like this guy's more important than the Torah, because even though he's in jail. And the honor of the Torah is that people should go to it. Okay, and he says, I explained further in the Berurah Halacha, which we won't see today, but just to know that this is only when you don't have 10. But if there is going to be 10, and they're all in the jail, then it's okay. All right, similar to like the house of an Avel. And it's even Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Now, for example, over here, he gives an example. So we say we even on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur we don't do this, but there's a minhag that the Mishnah is going to discuss here now. He says there are some people who go from shul to a minyan of people that's in their house, and they bring a Sefer Torah with them there, and they're going to read it there. So that's not appropriate to do because they could go to shul and hear it there. Okay. So according to, and he quotes the El Yerabah. So therefore, you see from here an important rule that one should go to shul to hear the Kriya. And some people are what we do in halacha sometimes it's called malamed zchus. Some people try to be more understanding of this approach. And since each person wants to read from the Torah on certain days, but they're not going to be able to do it in shul and so on. So this is not really for them to be disrespectful to the Torah, but they're not, because they're not taking it from the shul, they're taking it from someone's house to another person's house. Okay, and also on Yom Norayim, when people sell the honors to other people. And those to go ahead and go for you to go to the shul means that if you don't let them sell those honors, they're going to lose out on the money they need to maintain the charities and the function of the synagogue and so on. So therefore, you want to go ahead and do those type of things, and especially if they're going to someone else's house who won't otherwise come to the shul, and then they would buy the honors themselves and honor the shul through that. Then going to their house would also be permitted because now you're honoring everything. Okay. So therefore, one shouldn't be so strict about this and sort of look at it as a case-by-case basis. Nonetheless, it's so much better to have everybody come to daven in shul and do Sefer Torah there. And if they want to do a minyan at someone else's house, then they should have a regular minyan there that reads from the Sefer Torah a little bit longer than just on a couple days. Okay, and the Ramah, we're going to talk about that you should have the Sefer Torah there for a couple days ahead of time. So the later authorities in the Ramah agree that if you set up a place in someone's house for the Sefer Torah, and it's going to stay there for a couple of days, that's fine, as long as you put it in a place that is set to be a place to store Torah. Okay? You also need to come there and be prepared to read the Torah as well. So what you would do is you would bring the minyan there, you take out the Torah, you read from it, and then put it back. And then there's that. Therefore, you would realize that it's not there for being brought there for one reading only, but it's meant to be a place to store a Sefer Torah. Okay, and therefore that would be more appropriate. And that's the Ramah's arguing that that's appropriate and more appropriate than just bringing the Sefer Torah on his own. And then we say that if he's an important person, there's some leniencies. So the Mishna explains that when we say he's important, it means that he's a very learned person, because the Torah is honored by being through a person who learns Torah. Okay, and so therefore that's not considered embarrassing to it. He also quotes a book called the Siman HaMa'or, that when we say that that this person is important, it's okay to bring the Sefer to him even if there's nothing compelling, like he's in the hospital or anything like that. But some people say that you should still prepare a place to do it and not rely on this permission for somebody important. Okay? And the leniency that the Ramah is bringing is that even without preparing a place for the Sefer Torah to rest, you just wrap it in a talus on a table. But if you set up a place, we're saying that would be even better than this relying on this leniency of the Ramah. And with that, we finish Kuf Lamed Hey. So let's do Kuf Lamed Vav. Okay, so this is one halacha, but it's got a lot of Mishnah Berurah to it. So Kuf Lamed Vav 136. Who are the ones called to the Torah on Shabbos? And it hath but one halacha. Okay. Zok Mechaber. On Shabbos and Yom Tov and Yom Kippur, you call after the Levi. So you've done the Kohen, and then you're now going to do the Levi. So after the Levi, you call a Talmid Chacham. Okay? Someone who's very wise, and who also is placed in an important job for the community. And after the Talmid Chacham, of that first Talmid Chacham who has the appointed position, that the next guy is another Talmid Chacham who could be appointed to be an important person in the community. Okay? And you also, the Ramah adds that you can ask them a question about any place in Halacha, and they could answer you. And after them, the children of Talmid Chachamim, whose fathers were appointed to be leaders of the community, and after them, people who are called the Roshei Knesios, and then all regular people. Right? Roshei Knesios means that they are the heads of the synagogues. Okay. So the Mishnah Berurah explains that this Seif is trying to teach us about who else should be getting aliyahs, because we just learned about Kohen and Levi and Yisrael. But what about if they're all Yisrael after that? What do we do? So he's saying that this halacha is coming to teach us about when you have lots of aliyot to fill, lots of aliyos to fill. So we say a Talmid Chacham who is appointed to a position. So the Maharil, who is a Rishon, one of the early rabbis of the Ashkenazi authorities, says that on Yom Tov you should call people who are the pillars of the community, who help to keep it up. Okay, and they should come before every other type of person, even a Talmud Chacham, who is like super duper smart. Okay, so they beat out that. That's on Yom Tov. Okay, what are the other groups of people we say that you should call at spot number 5 and 6? Should be those whose fathers occupy a high position. Okay, and the Mishnah Berurah explains because you're required to honor them as well. Okay, because you honor them and you honor the fathers. Now, normally you don't. We're going to learn that you don't call a son after a father. So there's going to be a break in between. That's me meta halacha analyzing them here, but we'll come back. That halacha will be mentioned later. And then after them, you get the people who are the heads of the Knesiot, Vasmeint. So this is when we're talking about those places when you don't sell the aliyahs. Okay. So there's some guy there who goes, you come up for aliyah, you come up for aliyah, and that guy calls these people. Okay, and you're supposed to delineate the aliyos to people based on their societal rank. But in places where they sell the aliyah, okay, and the money goes for charity, those people can be honored in their stead. Okay, and that way people won't fight about it. And these are also called people who are also called up for some obligation, like they it's for a lost parent or a deceased spouse. You should call them up as well. But that's a later custom that people have introduced. Okay. So then the last people are everybody else. And nowadays the custom is that the highest ranking person in the congregation, he's the one who who finishes the parsha. Okay, that's unless you're selling them, which nowadays. So just to be clear, that's why we also have people who do Mishna Berurah afterwards, and the people make a donation. So that way, when they call them up, the idea is that they are getting this because they make a donation. Okay. So people like myself who don't want to make a donation on Shabbos, if you didn't call me up because of my status, don't then surprise me with a donation afterwards. So they have to kind of balance that. Okay. So the Mishnah Berurah here brings an interesting tshuva. He says that in a place where the custom is that one of the founders or one of the sustainers of the community, he gets to be called up frequently. He does not need to forgive that aliyah. He could get one every week. Okay. And these laws are explained later on in Siman Kuf Nun Gimel. Okay, in 153. So in the Mishnah Berurah there, in the 12th halacha in, we're going to go through these rules. Okay, and a lot of these rules come up in later centuries as people's communities became more developed and people started to demand the stuff, and we'll see sort of fundamentally how these rules developed. Okay, so the Pri Megadim writes that there are certain small communities that they call people based on their age. Okay. Even if they're not learned, and that's even for Talmud Chacham. So he says that that's not an appropriate custom, and that should be prohibited. Okay. However, there's a lot to go through over here in a lot of these rules, and we explain them in the Biur Halacha. So we have a few minutes, so we can take a look at this Biur Halacha over here. So the Mishnah Berurah explains that there's a lot of rules, okay? So here are the rules that are laid out for calling people up to the Torah, okay? And these are all based on things that have been enacted over the years, and they were recorded in the work of the Levush, the Teres Sikanim in this case, and that is work called the Teres Sikanim, and also the Magen Avraham. And in Magen Avraham, he lists them in 282. Okay, so it's not a it's a long list. It's not necessarily exhaustive. Ooh, well, we have time to go through this thing. Let's see. It's pretty long. Oh, it's longer than I thought it was. Okay. Well, let's go through some of them here for a couple minutes, just to give you an idea about where this stuff comes out. And I think maybe I'll add a separate video of just me going through this one Berurah Halacha, because we'll pick up with Kufal and Zion next week. Okay, so the people who get precedence. Okay, a chassan on the day of his wedding, a chassan on the Shabbos before his wedding. Okay, so any young person who's getting a bar mitzvah on that Shabbos, a husband whose wife just gave birth within the previous week, okay, and she also came to shul, so you're also going to say the bracha for her for having survived a travail, but that's another set of halachas over there as well. And you're also going to name the child as well, but you get the aliyah. The chassan on the Shabbos after the wedding, a yard site, meaning it's the anniversary of someone passing away. Okay, that's assuming that Shabbos is the day in which that person passed away, whether it's his father or his mother. Okay, the father of a son. Okay, on the Shabbos before the bris milah. Okay, some people also give the mohel and the sonic aliyahs on that Shabbos as well. But some people don't do that, and they only give them a hagba. A chassan on the day of his chasana, which is also during the week. So he's also going to take precedence on a regular weekday, despite what anybody else does. Okay, and he's even going to take precedence over bar mitzvah, and even take precedence over a yard site. Okay. And then later on, there comes if the child did the bar mitzvah during the week, and he lives in that city, so he's going to come in front of other people during the week. Okay. You also say the blessing of Baruch Shepa Tarani, but we're going to learn about that halacha in Siman Reish Chav Hey 225. Okay. And then if a chassan's during the week of Sheva Brachos, he's actually going to beat that out. But what they suggest is actually that you should try to flip a coin and see who might win that. Actually, or it says you pull lots, which we would do. We would flip a coin. But if the bar mitzvah kid doesn't live in that town and the chassan does, the chassan goes first. Okay. The chassan on the Shabbos that is before anybody else, he also precedes everybody else, even if it's a yard site on that day. Even if the chasana isn't exactly that week, but this is the week that they're celebrating it. Okay, and he has to travel more than a week from his home city to go make it. So that's that. So there's a lot of other little pratim over here, but those are like the big rules to kind of know about. So you kind of like chassan kind of like wins. Then you kind of get bar mitzvahs, and you get yard sites. So those seem to be the ones. And then they kind of fight it out over, when the chassan is. You have two chassans, and is someone their first marriage, is their second marriage? That's a lot of the rest of the rules over here. And when there's what type of yard site is it? The yard site from here, or is the yard site being pushed off from another month, like Adar, where you can't, or Nisan, where we don't do a yard site stuff. So that's what the rest of this Berurah Halacha has to do with. But just what you see over here, that for the most part, it has to do with chassan, bar mitzvahs, and yard sites. So a little bit of that. So everybody's best guess. Thank you for joining. We will pick up next time in the laws of Kriyas Torah, and we will continue learning about how to give people aliyahs. But next time we're actually going to learn how much you have to read. So we're really going to talk about the reading itself next time. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next week.